If you think Jamaica's biggest robbery happened in banks, you're wrong. The real theft happened in daylight on paper, with smiles, handshakes, and signatures. It wasn't just money that was stolen, it was the land itself. Listen till the end, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about Jamaica's development. It began quietly in the late 1990 seconds, when foreign investors started whispering about Jamaica's untapped potential. Behind every headline about modernization and growth, there was a hidden clause, a secret paper transferring ownership of Jamaica's most fertile lands to foreign hands. A leaked file from the Ministry of Agriculture revealed that between 1998 and 2004, more than 420,000 acres of prime farmland in Street, Elizabeth, Clarendon, and Trelawney were leased for 99 years to foreign agricultural partners. But these partners were no small farmers. They were billion-dollar corporations from the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. And the deals? They were so secret that even the farmers who lived and worked on the lands never knew they no longer owned them. The first public sign of betrayal came in a farming community called Nain in Street Elizabeth. For decades, families there grew yams, bananas, and cassava. Then one morning, bulldozers arrived. The men who operated them said they worked for a company called Carib Agrotech, a foreign Jamaican partnership. But locals later discovered that the company was registered in Delaware, USA, with no Jamaican shareholders at all. Farmer Linton Murray, who lost 22 acres, recalled, "They came with papers, say government sell it for development, but who they developing for? Not we." Soon after, another project appeared in Clarendon. Officials promised jobs and irrigation. What followed instead was relocation, eviction, and devastation. Villages were cleared, homes destroyed, and rich soil scraped off for export. Yes, exported. Satellite photos showed containers of Jamaica's own earth shipped out through Kingston Port, labeled as organic materials. When journalists asked about it, officials answered with one sentence: confidential contract under international development. As the years went by, Jamaica's hills began to disappear under concrete, resorts, and mining zones. The phrase foreign investment became a mask for takeover. By 2010, nearly one-third of Jamaica's arable land was under foreign control. That's when a small group of government clerks began leaking files to a journalist known only as LJ. The documents later became part of the scandal, now remembered as Operation Paradise Papers. The leaks revealed secret phone calls, offshore bank accounts, and private meetings between Jamaican ministers and European diplomats. They showed land worth billions, sold not through public tender, but through shell companies and secret accounts. One file, marked classified, mentioned the creation of a task force called Operation Crownland Reallocation. It stated that strategic foreign partners should acquire large tracts of non-utilized rural lands for exclusive agro-industrial use. In the margin of the document, someone had written in blue ink, approved by PMH Confidential, those three initials, PMH, would one day set the country on fire. Because when people finally discovered who they belonged to, the entire island would tremble. When the initials PMH finally reached the public, the discovery was explosive. It stood for Patrick M. Howell, Jamaica's former Minister of Finance, and a close ally of multiple foreign investors during his term. At first, many dismissed it as rumor. But then came a leak, a single email thread between Howell's office and a European billionaire named Lucas Brandt. The email began with polite greetings and words like partnership and cooperation. But further down, the tone changed. Brandt wrote, "We can't proceed without guaranteed access to the Central Plains. I need assurance from your Prime Minister that our ownership rights will not be questioned in future administrations." Minutes later, Howell replied from his official account, "PMH has confirmed. You have our full cooperation. Jamaica is open." That phrase, "Jamaica is open," became the slogan of betrayal. Weeks later, satellite images showed Brandt's construction company moving heavy machinery into Clarendon. At the same time, locals began receiving notices to vacate for redevelopment. Some resisted. But armed private security, not Jamaican police, arrived with eviction orders bearing the logo of a company called Kingston Green Development Limited. Journalists digging into Kingston Green found it was registered to a shell address in Luxembourg, controlled by a holding firm owned by none other than Lucas Brandt. Yet official documents still listed it as a local partnership. An anonymous ministry staffer, calling himself the Clerk, sent a message to a local news outlet. They are selling the country plot by plot. Everything you see called investment is a contract signed in darkness. Farmers from Street Catherine and Manchester soon began reporting similar stories. Foreigners showing up with maps and documents, claiming ownership of entire hillsides and valleys. Some said they were offered small cash payments to leave. Others were threatened with legal action. Then came the jaw-dropping twist. An internal memo leaked from the office of the Prime Minister, showing that Howell and 3 senior officials had secretly approved a strategic land exchange program. In exchange for development support, Jamaica agreed to hand over 30% of state-owned agricultural land to an entity called Green Island Global, which promised modern farms, employment, and export revenue. But Green Island Global didn't build farms. It built villas, private airstrips, and fenced-off properties with foreign flags flying proudly where the Jamaican flag used to wave. As word spread, rural communities erupted in anger. Men in Trelawney blocked roads with old tractors and burning tires, shouting, "A fie we land, not fie foreign man." Women in Clarendon marched barefoot, carrying handfuls of soil, chanting, "We na sell we earth." Yet the government called them misinformed agitators. National television refused to air their protests, showing instead smiling officials at ribbon-cutting ceremonies beside European and Chinese businessmen. Behind the scenes, something even darker was unfolding. A phone call between Howell and Lucas Brandt was intercepted by an international agency investigating offshore corruption. In that recording, Howell's voice was calm, even casual. "We've done what you asked. The rest will be signed before election year. Once the rural people move out, we can start the second phase." Brandt's reply was cold. "Good. Make sure it stays quiet. Jamaica's silence is our profit." That single call, once leaked, would shake the country more than any hurricane ever had. But at that moment, it was locked away in an encrypted file on a government server labeled Private Archive, PMH 199-92008. And when the Clerk found out what was hidden there, he made a decision that would change Jamaica forever. The Clerk had worked in the Ministry of Finance for almost 15 years. He wasn't a politician, just a quiet man who handled records and filed contracts. He saw faces come and go, handshakes made, deals signed, but he kept his head down. Until one night, while doing inventory for the ministry's digital archive, he found a folder he wasn't supposed to see. It was hidden inside a folder marked Tourism Incentives, but its true title read Operation Sand and Soil. The documents inside were stamped Classified Level 5. As he opened them, the truth spilled across his screen like poison. The first file was a list of lands, over 800,000 acres of farmland, forest, and mineral-rich territory, divided into numbered zones. Each zone had a code name and a foreign buyer. Zone A3 Germany, Zone B6 Canada, Zone D2 the United States, Zone F5 the United Arab Emirates. Next came the map, a red-lined copy of Jamaica, where entire parishes had been carved into sections. The note at the bottom read, Phase 3 to commence 2021. Transfer of title to international investors in exchange for financial aid. Confidential coordination required between MOF and PM office. And there it was again, the signature. PM Howell. The clerk scrolled further and found emails exchanged between Howell and a British consultancy firm called Emerald Atlantic Advisors. In one message, the British CEO wrote, "We are pleased with your efficiency. As agreed, payment of 9.8 million USD has been wired to the Zurich account under code 29 BPMH. Another email contained a scanned receipt confirming a deposit into a private account in the Bahamas. The amount matched. He printed everything. He knew it was dangerous, but something in him broke that night. He stuffed the pages into an envelope marked "Personal" and left the office before sunrise. 2 days later, the clerk met journalist LJ in a small bar near Mandeville. LJ had already published small pieces about land theft, but nothing of this scale. When she opened the envelope and saw the maps, she whispered, "This isn't corruption. This is colonization." That night, she recorded an interview with the clerk in secret. His voice was altered, his name withheld, but his words were chilling. "They sold our country, 1 acre at a time. The people think foreigners rent land. No, they own it. The contracts say perpetual renewable lease, which means forever." Within days, LJ's article titled "The Land That Vanished" went viral. The government denied everything, calling it fake news, but the pressure grew. Opposition leaders demanded answers in Parliament. International media began circling. Then came another twist. A mysterious fire at the Ministry of Finance destroyed part of the physical archive. The clerk disappeared 2 days later. His home was found empty, lights on, his car still parked outside. Police called it a missing persons case, but everyone knew better. LJ refused to stop. She released more files showing how the Operation Sand and Soil project was linked to major foreign corporations, companies that built luxury resorts on land once owned by farmers, companies that mined bauxite under the disguise of eco-development. One contract mentioned the Royal Terra Consortium, a multinational alliance that had paid Jamaica $400 million in support loans in exchange for permanent access to mineral and agricultural zones. The clause read clearly, "Land under consortium management shall be exempt from domestic taxation, labor laws, or environmental regulations." That meant foreign companies could do anything they wanted on Jamaican soil: dig, mine, pollute, displace, without consequence. The leaks caused outrage. In Kingston, students marched with signs saying, "Who sold Jamaica?" In Montego Bay, church leaders held vigils praying for truth. And across social media, the words number "Operation Sand and Soil" spread like wildfire. Then, one night, LJ received an email from a private address. It contained a single line, "You found the buyers, now find the sellers." Attached was a 10-second audio file. It was heavily distorted, but she could make out 2 voices, one unmistakably belonging to Patrick M. Howell. The other was deep, foreign, and confident. "Once the agricultural zones are cleared, we can begin extraction. The locals will adapt. Poverty is profitable." The recording ended with laughter. LJ stared at her screen in silence. She knew the voice. It was the same European billionaire who had shaken Howell's hand at the Clarendon signing ceremony, Lucas Brandt. And that meant one terrifying thing. The exploitation wasn't over. It was still happening right now. When the recording leaked, it exploded like a bomb across the island. Within hours, every major news outlet had published fragments of it. The clip of Howell and Brandt laughing about poverty being profitable spread like wildfire. It was played on radio stations, sent in WhatsApp groups, and blasted from speakers in taxis and buses. Jamaica was furious. In towns and cities, people marched with placards that read, "Not for sale," "Hands off Jamaica," and "We want back our land." For the first time in years, every class, farmers, teachers, university students, Rastafarians, even business owners stood together. The outrage was beyond politics. It was national, but the government stayed quiet. Howell went into hiding, claiming medical leave. The Prime Minister called the recordings inauthentic and accused foreign actors of manipulating them to destabilize the country. Still, no one believed the denials. As pressure grew, new evidence surfaced, evidence even more damning than the first leaks. LJ received a second flash drive delivered by courier with no sender name. It contained encrypted documents labeled Project LIGNUM, dated 2022. Once decrypted, the files revealed that Operation Sand and Soil had evolved into something even bigger. Project Lignum planned to transfer ownership of Jamaica's forests and mineral deposits to a new foreign-led consortium. Entire protected areas, cockpit country, parts of the Blue Mountains, and even sections of the Rio Grande Valley were marked as potential development zones. In exchange, Jamaica would receive $1.2 billion in green energy grants. But the grants never existed. It was a cover to disguise the sale of national reserves. One memo from a British consultant read, "We have secured favorable conditions. Locals will be informed that we are funding reforestation programs." In reality, it's a full land conversion initiative. Another note, written in Howell's handwriting, said simply, "Proceed," quietly. LJ's stomach turned as she read those words. The documents were stamped with signatures from not only local ministers, but also representatives from major Western energy companies. Each page was another nail in the coffin of Jamaica's independence. That night, she went on air for the first time. Her voice trembled, but her message was clear. The foreign powers who once took our sugar, our bauxite, and our people have returned for the last thing we own, our land. The next morning, the entire island was in uproar. Protesters surrounded government buildings. Foreign embassies tightened security. In Montego Bay, police clashed with demonstrators when they tried to block construction trucks heading to a development site that turned out to be a cleared section of national forest. As tensions rose, a shocking event occurred. One of Howell's close aides, Anthony Reed, was found dead in his car on a remote road near Mandeville. The official report said it was suicide, but the timing was too suspicious. Reed had been mentioned in the Lignum files as facilitator of offshore transfers. Rumors spread that he had tried to flee the country with more documents. Then came an even greater shock. International reporters traced Project Lignum's funding to a London-based firm called Crownland Finance Limited, which was, in turn, owned by a powerful Western bank that had historical ties to colonial Jamaica in the 1800s. The past and present had collided. The very powers that once enslaved Jamaica's ancestors were now secretly reclaiming their land, this time through contracts and corruption instead of chains. Protesters began calling it the Second Colonization. In Kingston, police helicopters hovered over crowds chanting, "We not slaves again." Fire burned near Halfway Tree. Across the island, black, green, and gold flags flew upside down, a signal of a nation in distress. Meanwhile, in a secure compound outside Kingston, a small group of politicians and investors met under tight security. Among them was a foreign ambassador, 3 Jamaican cabinet members, and a man in a gray suit with silver hair, Lucas Brant himself. Their discussion was caught on a secret recording by a frightened staffer who hid her phone under the conference table. In that meeting, Brant spoke with chilling confidence. If the people riot, they'll calm down. History shows us that poverty always wins in the end. We control the land, and that means we control their future. One minister hesitated. "What if the truth spreads further?" Brant smirked. "Then we change the narrative. We'll call it climate investment. No one questions saving the planet." When LJ got hold of that recording, she knew it was the final proof she needed. But before she could publish it, her apartment was broken into. Her laptop was stolen, files erased. What the intruders didn't know was that she had already uploaded the audio to a secure cloud, programmed to release automatically if she went offline for more than 12 hours. That timer had already started ticking at exactly 6 a.m. The world woke up to an earthquake, not one from nature, but from truth. The recording from LJ's hidden cloud went public across every social platform. The voices of Lucas Brant and the Jamaican ministers filled phones, radios, and TVs worldwide. Within hours, the Second Colonization was trending across the Caribbean, Africa, and even in London itself. CNN, Al Jazeera, and BBC all tried to contact Jamaica's government for comment. Silence, but the streets were louder than ever. In Kingston, thousands of protesters filled the city center. University students formed human chains around the Parliament building, chanting, "No land, no peace." Fishermen in Port Royal blocked harbors with their boats. Rastafarians prayed and beat drums outside the U.S. Embassy, shouting, "Babylon must fall." The Jamaican people had reached their limit. Meanwhile, in secret, a rebellion of another kind was forming inside the government itself. Not every politician was corrupt. A young deputy minister named Dr. Corrine Ellis, who had long been sidelined for opposing Howell's deals, gathered a small team of patriotic insiders. They called themselves the Green Covenant. Their goal: expose the entire network of land theft and foreign exploitation from the inside. Dr. Ellis reached out to LJ through an encrypted channel. "They will arrest you soon," she warned. "But we can help you. We have proof they cannot destroy." Within days, LJ met the Green Covenant in a safe house near Ocho Rios. There, she saw the unimaginable secret intelligence reports from 2015 showing that foreign powers had been targeting Jamaica for resource acquisition long before Howell even became Prime Minister. One report was titled Strategic Resource Expansion, Caribbean Zone. It listed Jamaica's rare minerals, limestone deposits, fertile valleys, and even its coastal aquifers. Each was marked for long-term acquisition by foreign entities, mostly Western companies, hidden behind Caribbean shell corporations. But there was something even darker. A memo from a European diplomat admitted that Jamaica's national debt was being artificially inflated through development loans that were never meant to be paid off. These loans forced the country to sell land and resources under restructuring agreements. In other words, economic slavery in disguise. LJ's heart pounded as she read the line that froze everyone in the room. Projected outcome: by 2035, 62% of Jamaica's landmass under foreign control through debt-linked concessions. That was the plan all along: sell the country piece by piece until ownership no longer belonged to its people. Dr. Ellis looked at LJ and said, "We have to show the world, but we must survive to do it." But he doing her. They decided to leak the files to African and South American media, knowing Western outlets might censor or twist the story. Within 48 hours, major African networks aired the exposé under the title Jamaica's Silent Colonization, a blueprint of global exploitation. The world was stunned. Across Africa, people compared it to how foreign corporations were taking over their own mines, farms, and ports. It became a movement. Hashtags like #LandIsLife and #We Own the Soil spread across continents. But just when it seemed like victory was near, a terrifying counterattack began. Unmarked black SUVs started appearing near journalists' homes. Government loyalists announced a new law against spreading disinformation. Several activists were detained without warrant. LJ went into hiding once again, but the Green Covenant continued leaking. Then came the bombshell revelation. Leaked Swiss bank documents showing that Patrick Howell held more than $80 million across multiple offshore accounts. The money came directly from land deals tied to Operation Sand and Soil and Project Lignum. The documents also linked Howell to international political figures, including a former UK minister, a US lobbyist, and Lucas Brandt's investment group. And the twist no one expected: one of Howell's offshore accounts had been co-signed by a Jamaican opposition leader who had publicly condemned him for corruption. The scandal implicated both ruling and opposition parties. That meant the rot wasn't on one side, it was everywhere. Jamaicans were furious, betrayed, and heartbroken. One elderly farmer, interviewed on live TV, said with tears in his eyes, "Dem tek die land from we ancestors with whip. Now dem tek it back with pen." Those words struck the entire nation. As protests reached the capital, soldiers began refusing orders to disperse the crowds. Some even joined the people. The air smelled of smoke, anger, and awakening. And just as it seemed Jamaica was about to collapse into chaos, something extraordinary happened. A private jet, unregistered and without a flight plan, landed secretly at Norman Manley Airport late at night. Inside was a man no one expected to ever return: Patrick M. Howell. He had come back to Jamaica, and he wasn't alone. Witnesses claimed a convoy of black vehicles escorted him under heavy guard to a hidden location near Portmore. No cameras, no press. Rumors said he came to negotiate. Others whispered he came to silence those who betrayed him. But what happened next would shock not just Jamaica, but the entire world. When dawn broke over Kingston the next morning, the sky was gray and restless. The wind felt heavy, as if carrying a warning. People crowded the streets again, waiting for news. No one knew where Patrick M. Howell had gone after landing in Jamaica, but rumors spread like wildfire. Some said he was negotiating his immunity. Others said he had come back with a foreign team to reclaim control. By 9 a.m., the government announced a national emergency broadcast. Every radio, television, and phone lit up. Howell appeared on screen, pale, tense, sweating slightly. Behind him stood 2 men in suits and 1 woman, none of whom looked Jamaican. They spoke no word, but their presence was enough to tell the country this was not just a local affair. "My fellow Jamaicans," Howell began, "there have been misunderstandings. Our international partnerships were made in good faith for national growth." He paused, his voice trembling. "But mistakes were made, documents have been altered, lies have been spread. I will address the nation fully soon." Then the feed cut abruptly. Black screen, silence. 30 minutes later, the signal returned, but it wasn't Howell. It was LJ. Her face filled the screen, her voice steady and fierce. "They tried to stop the truth," she said. "They failed. Every file, every contract, every recording is now backed up across dozens of servers around the world. Even if I disappear, the truth will live." Then she dropped the biggest revelation yet. Patrick Howell did not act alone. He was following orders from a network of foreign lobbyists, bankers, and politicians who have done the same in Africa, Asia, and the Caribbean. And I have proof emails, signatures, and bank transfers. Jamaica was a test model. The goal was to turn small nations into economic plantations owned, not governed. The crowd outside the broadcasting building erupted. People wept, screamed, prayed. The mask had finally fallen. Moments later, military vehicles surrounded the studio. Gunshots were heard. The broadcast froze. For the next 12 hours, Jamaica went dark. No internet, no cell service, no television. The country fell into a deep silence, broken only by sirens and distant chants. But silence, too, can be powerful. In that silence, something changed. When communication returned the next morning, the government had fallen. Soldiers had taken control of the capital and announced a Transitional People's Council. It was the first time in modern history that the Jamaican army sided fully with the people. Dr. Corrine Ellis, the deputy minister who led the Green Covenant, appeared on live television with the national flag behind her. "Jamaica belongs to Jamaicans. The land is not for sale, not for lease, not for compromise. Every deal made under Operation Sand and Soil and Project Lignum is hereby declared null and void." Crowds across the island exploded in joy and disbelief. Farmers embraced strangers. Students sang the national anthem through tears. Even the sea seemed to roar with pride that morning. But amid the celebration came one last shock. At 4:15 p.m., police discovered a burned-out SUV near Portmore. Inside were the remains of 2 unidentified men and a charred briefcase. Hours later, dental records confirmed the impossible one of them was Patrick M. Howell. The briefcase survived partially intact. Inside were papers and a small hard drive. When the Green Covenant decoded it, they found what would become the final twist of the entire saga. The drive contained private letters from foreign officials thanking Howell for his courage in advancing resource integration. But one letter stood out, signed by Lucas Brandt himself. "You served your role well. The land deal is just the beginning. Phase 2 involves water. Always remember, whoever owns the water owns the people." The revelation sent a chill through everyone who read it. It proved that the exploitation hadn't been about tourism or mining, it had been about control of life itself. LJ, now in hiding abroad, released her final message. The story of Jamaica is not just a story about land. It's a warning to the world. They will come for your soil, your rivers, your future, smiling, shaking hands, speaking the language of development. Don't be fooled. Protect what is yours. Months later, Jamaica's new transitional government began auditing every foreign contract ever signed. Some Western companies threatened sanctions, others quietly backed off. A movement spread across the Caribbean, Trinidad, St. Lucia, Barbados, demanding their own land transparency acts. And in a small village in St. Elizabeth, an old farmer stood before his field, freshly plowed after years of abandonment. He looked up at the sunrise and whispered, "Dem tricel we, but we still here. We still own D ground." That simple sentence became the heart of a new national campaign. We still own the ground. It was printed on shirts, sung in songs, painted on school walls. It became more than a slogan. It became a spiritual rebirth. The story of how Jamaica's rich lands were sold piece by piece to foreigners had ended not in silence, but in awakening. And as the final voice of LJ echoed in the last surviving broadcast, listen to the end. Because the end is only the beginning of resistance.